We talk about area. An area of a region is the amount of surface it covers. An area can be measured by covering it with square units. Today, we will learn what types of units are used to describe area and how we use them. We're used to measuring lines, and we're measuring the length. But when you talk about area, we want to know how much space it takes up, not the length. When we measure area, we talk about square units. A square unit is a square where every side is 1 unit long. Now the question is, which unit would we want to use? Let's say that we want to make a bookmark for our book. Our bookmark has to have an area of 20 square units. And remember, a square unit is a square with all sides 1 unit long. So the question is, should we use centimeters or should we use square inches as a unit? Think about what we know about inches and centimeters. On a ruler, the inches are longer and the centimeters are smaller. There are 12 inches on a ruler, that makes a foot, and there are 30 centimeters on a ruler. So centimeters are smaller. Which would be easier to make a bookmark? Which would fit in the book? Let's say that this grid represents centimeters. If I wanted to make a bookmark using centimeters, I could just count. I need an area of 20, so I'm just going to count 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So then my bookmark, my line's not very straight, but that's okay. My bookmark would be that big. Let's say that this grid paper represented inches, square inches. So I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So if I use square inches, my bookmark would be this big. Which unit of measure do you think would work better for a bookmark? Square centimeters or square inches? I'm thinking square centimeters because it's a lot smaller and it seems like it would fit in my book a lot better. Now the reason we called it a square centimeter is it was a square that was a centimeter long on each side, just like right here. And the reason we called it a square inch is because it was a square that was an inch on each side, so it was a square inch. Let's talk about a foot. We know a foot is 12 inches long, and that can measure a length. But if we wanted to measure area, we would have to create a square foot. So what I did is I took my ruler and I made a square foot. It is 1 foot long on this side, 1 foot long on this side, and 1 foot long on this side, and on the fourth side. And that's how we measure area, by creating a square foot. We can also measure things in miles. Here's an example of a square mile. From this line to this line is 1 mile. So what they did is they created a square where each side of the square was a mile long, so it becomes 1 square mile because it makes a square. And notice how big it is. You've got highways going through, you've got blocks, and you've got buildings and streets. A square mile is a pretty big piece of land. Now, when you're doing yard work, most of the time people go for a square yard. So if I wanted to plant grass or buy grass like here, I would order it by the square yard. And I would have to pay for it by the square yard. And it doesn't really roll out like that. This football team came up with a pretty good idea to make some money. A football field is 100 yards. But they wanted to make some money, so they decided that you could sponsor a square yard. And see, they made a square, and each side is 1 yard long. And if you paid a $100 donation for their team, you could have a square yard with your name on it. But look how small it is compared to the rest of the field. Pretty neat. And if you wanted a nice spot in the end zone, if you wanted to buy a nice square yard in the end zone with your name on it, you'd have to make a $250 donation. And if you wanted a nice square with your name on it in the end 50-yard line right in the middle, you'd have to make a $400 donation. Those football players must have known a lot about math in order to donate square yards. Just like when you measure anything else, you want to make sure you're using the appropriate length to make a square yard. You can use centimeters, you can use inches, you can use feet, you can use yards, you can use miles. All of these would work, but make sure that it's appropriate for the size of what you're measuring.